Hey, we're going to talk this morning about your heart and more specifically hypertension, high blood pressure, and insulin resistance, and five direct ways that insulin resistance is causing high blood pressure, and which is why they're saying that 95% of high blood pressure comes from insulin resistance. And so we want to go over that this morning. And first of all, I want to talk about something. I am not a doctor. I'm not a physician, a nutritionist. I'm not any of those things. I'm just a real world woman who got really sick. And when all of those professionals weren't able to help me, even called me in the office and told me they were not going to be able to help me, I found something that worked and I started learning about insulin resistance and it changed my life. That's why I'm here sharing it with you guys. I will be talking about the protocol that finally helped me when all of these physicians, nutritionists, whatnot failed me. So hang out. We're going to talk about all that. Now, as you guys are all jumping in, somebody yesterday, Barbara, asked about acetic acid. I was laughing my ass off after the live because here's the truth about me that maybe you guys don't know. You probably don't know because I don't talk about it a lot. I am a survivor of some pretty intense childhood trauma. And so what's happened is I have autism, I have ADHD that's exacerbated by that trauma. But sometimes in situations when something is put forward that I'm not ready for, my brain will actually shut down. So I was laughing because as I was reading the word acetic acid, I was like, I should know that, I should know that. But the stress response in me shut down. Acetic acid is just apple cider vinegar. So I was cracking up afterward because how could I not answer that question? So let's talk about acetic acid before we talk about the heart, and then we'll answer that question. Hopefully, that will give some answers. She asked what my thoughts were on acetic acid when we were talking about insulin resistance and how to overcome it. So here's my thought. My dad asked me to put apple cider vinegar in water every morning before I started my day from years and years ago. So it's a very old remedy that people have used to help burn off weight. The science, however, shows that some science papers show that there's great results with this apple cider vinegar, and some results show that there really wasn't any change with it. So, do you want to add apple cider vinegar to your morning? You can, for sure. Be careful. There are some people who shouldn't be doing high amounts of apple cider vinegar or acetic acid. So be careful with that. Make sure that you're not having this acidic reflux from it. And that's part of the reason why you're mixing it in some water and drinking it down. I've heard people add in some Himalayan salt or Celtic salt with it, which is a great idea. But if I had to trust the reversal of my diabetes on acetic acid alone, would I do that? No, I wouldn't. You see, I'd done that before because my dad always talked to me about it. So I had been doing apple cider shots in the morning. It really wasn't affecting my weight. Yeah, I had some more energy. It wasn't affecting my diabetes. So is it the standalone to help with this? I don't think so. We're going to talk about the thing that I actually found that did reverse my diabetes and help me out now. Do I do apple cider shots every once in a while? Absolutely, I do. Do I rely on it for the end all be all for all of my health? No, I don't. So that's my answer on acetic acid. And sorry that I was in this moment of nobody was attacking me, so I don't know why my brain goes there, but it does sometimes. So we want to talk about your heart today. So I want to go into this. How many of you guys know somebody? Put a one in the comments or just tap the hearts. Let me know. Do you know somebody who has high blood pressure, who's suffering with heart problems, who maybe their blood pressure is 130 over 80? Maybe it's you, and they don't think it's that bad. Um, Hypertension starts at 130 over 80 or higher. So if your constant blood pressure is 130 over 80 or higher, you have hypertension. And it's not normal and it's not good for your heart or your body all the way around. And if you're like me, you've been to doctor after doctor and they keep giving you medications, your blood pressure's not getting better. Does anybody feel that way? Because that was me for sure. I had seen so many doctors. I had gone to doctors on the reservation. I had gone to doctors off the reservation. I had gone to doctors all across the board trying to figure out my blood pressure. I was being cycled through medications. One of my doctors, my primary care, was also a very good friend, and she was terrified of what was going to happen to me if we couldn't get my blood pressure under control. So the best we had my blood pressure in her office was 150 over 110. That's well above 130 over 80, and we couldn't get it under control. She kept giving me different medications. She kept going and doing research and looking and coming back and being, "Okay, well, that hasn't been working. Let's try this." All the while she was, and she voiced it to me in a very gentle tone, such a wonderful provider, but she expressed to me how terrified she was that something bad was gonna happen if we couldn't get this under control. So imagine her surprise when one week I had had a doctor's appointment with her on, like, a Thursday. I had a week after follow-up to go over some labs and stuff that she had done, and the week later, what the only thing that changed was over the weekend, the protocol that I'm gonna talk about came in, and I started doing it religiously. Within 6 days of starting the protocol, I went to this doctor's office visit, and my blood pressure was 126 over 84. I screamed like a little girl. I made her go get my chart and look at it because there had never been a blood pressure that low charted in my chart. Today, I wake up and my blood pressure is 112 over 70. Every day, I'm off of all medications. How did that happen? I'm going to explain to you how, but understand I didn't understand all of this. I didn't have any reason why. I just trusted the process and did it, and it worked. But I want to share with you why it works. So let's dive into insulin resistance and your blood pressure. All right. Does anybody have questions before I start out on this? And does everybody understand insulin resistance really well, so that we can understand why it's a problem? Maybe I'll go over, maybe we'll do this backwards. I'll talk about insulin resistance later. I'm just going to talk right now about how it affects your blood pressure, since that's what we're here for this morning. And then please ask questions as we go along, because the more questions you ask, the better information you get, and so does everyone else. And maybe there's somebody out there who just doesn't feel like piping in and saying, "Hey, I have blood pressure or heart problems. Help." So let's go. So there's 5 ways insulin resistance can cause high blood pressure. The first one I like to talk about all the time is in your endothelial cells. So what's happening here is your blood vessels are made up of several different layers, and the innermost layer is called the endothelium. So let me do something here real quick. Can I? Maybe it's not going to let me do it now. Let's try this. Um, Sorry, you guys. There was a setting so that I could show you guys this, but I'm gonna flip it around and show you anyway. Here we go. So this is a diagram of the of your blood vessels. What I want to talk about is this innermost layer here, the endothelial cells. With insulin resistance, there's a couple of things happening. This innermost layer gets really thick, and so that space where the blood vessels flow through, it's not as open anymore as it should be. And so what we have is we have volume that, say we're trying to go through the size of a fire hose. Because that innermost layer is thickening, it reduces that interior size down to about the size of, say, a garden hose. So now what I want you to think about is trying to pass the volume of that fire hose through the size of a garden hose. Your pressure is going to be pretty high at this point because there's just more volume going through than that space can allow. So pressure is building. That's number one way that this is happening. So Irene, you're currently in the hospital, blood sugar reading is high, and so is the blood pressure uncontrolled. So you definitely have, I mean, I'm not a doctor. So let's say that first. I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose. But if I were to have those numbers, I would be like, "Oh, shoot, my insulin resistance is out of control. I need to get control of it." But Irene, hang out for a second because what I want to tell you is that getting your blood sugar under control and your blood pressure under control are the same root thing that we're going to deal with, and it works. It's helped thousands of people around the world. Understanding that we got to get insulin resistance under control, your blood sugars will get under control, your blood pressure will get under control. So let's get through these 5 things, and then I'm going to tell you exactly how to do it. And Nadine, if you just, or Irene, if you just don't have time to, I was confusing your first name and your last name, Irene Nadu. So you can go to my link in my profile and click on that, and it will show you how to get the protocol. There's a website with a little bit about my story in there. Go check that out if you just don't have time. But if you're in the hospital, you're kind of captive audience, so hang out. Number one way was that thickened endothelial cell. So let's take a look at those again, because I want to talk about something else in the very end. What I want you guys to look at, and this diagram wasn't meant for this purpose, but this is how we're going to use it. This comes from the Cleveland Clinic, by the way, one of the #1 heart hospitals in the world. So the endothelium is too thick. Now your blood pressure is rising because you don't have enough space to pass that blood vessel through. What I want you to notice is down here where that endothelium is all damaged. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Okay. So, my camera's hung up for a second. Not quite sure what's going on here. There we are. Okay, so now what I want to talk about then is my camera skills are off today. That's what I want to talk about. The next thing we're going to talk about then still has to do with those endothelium, the endothelial cells, the innermost layer of your blood vessels. So now not only are they thick and tight, but there's a whole lot else going on. So this is kind of exceed 5, but when those endothelial cells are thick and tight and just inflamed, not to do with your heart, but to do with your brain, this is also your blood-brain barrier. And when it's not functioning correctly, your brain is not getting the nutrients it needs. So this is not only affecting your heart, but it's affecting your brain. Think migraine headaches, brain fog, depression, all of that. But today we're talking about heart. So now the endothelium does something else. It produces a component called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is what helps our blood vessels relax and expand when they need to allow for blood flow. But now, when these endothelium are so thick because of insulin resistance, making to feeding, I skipped that part. Boy, what a job I'm doing today. So the endothelium, remember insulin resistance, sometimes cells are resistant to the insulin, sometimes cells are taking up too much. The endothelium is one of the areas where they're going to say, ooh, extra energy, I'll take it. So then the endothelial cells are growing, and that's how they're getting thick, because insulin is delivering too much energy to those cells. Now that they're thickened and greedy little endothelial cells, and the blood pressure is rising because the space is smaller, now in this inflamed, swollen state, they cannot produce nitric oxide in the way that they're supposed to. So now not only are those blood vessels thick and tight, they just can't open up and relax. So now your blood pressure is continuing to increase because a cue that your body is supposed to have, nitric oxide, to allow that to open up, isn't happening. Okay, so that's number 2. Both of those have to do with the endothelium. Number 3, now that we have all of this pressure up, insulin raised over time increases cortisol as well. So now cortisol is your stress hormone. Cortisol is going to get your heart pumping a little faster. With insulin resistance, your cortisol is increased almost constantly. So that means that your heart now is pumping harder all the time because of the excess insulin in your body, cueing the hormone, one hormone communicating to another. Insulin is increasing cortisol. So tight, thick blood vessels that can open up, and now a heart that's pumping even faster and harder because of increased cortisol. 3 ways that it's starting to become really devastating for your blood pressure and your heart. Your heart's just going to get tired after time. I know. I've been there. I'm there now. So the fourth way has nothing to do with any of these, but it's really important and it ties into something else that's really prevalent with insulin resistance, and that's your kidneys. So inside your kidneys, there's another component created called aldosterone. Aldosterone regulates the sugar, or not the sugar, the salt and water in our blood vessels. Aldosterone helps us dump off a lot of that salt so we're not retaining too much water when we don't want to. But in the presence of insulin resistance, too much insulin over a long period of time, that aldosterone isn't being produced because of malfunctions related to the insulin in the kidneys. Now, what that means is that insulin is affecting this filtration system. So now your kidneys are not filtering out enough salt and it's holding on to the salt internally in your body. So that extra salt is floating around your blood vessels. Now, where salt goes, water goes. You have more salt in your blood vessels, in your blood, then you're going to have more water volume in your blood. This is one of the reasons why traditional knowledge is cut the salt if you have heart problems or high blood pressure. But what if we shift that and start understanding that salt is a necessary electrolyte and that sugar is what's really causing the problem? So would you be willing to give up some sugar to be able to have normal amounts of salt on your food and not worry about your blood pressure? Now, while you have high blood pressure, yes, keep watching your salt because we don't want excess in there while your kidneys can't filtrate. But if you want all of that reversed and taken care of, start taking care of the insulin resistance. The kidneys will start to filter correctly. You won't have the swelling and the edema. You won't have the high blood pressure. For most people, this is true. And you're going to start to feel much better. But it comes down to regulating the sugar, not the salt. Salt is important, but it's by regulating the sugar that we can normalize everything else. So that's 4 ways. Thickened endothelial cells, they can't relax, the heart's pumping faster because of cortisol, and now your kidneys aren't filtering out excess fluid, so that pressure is just continuing to build. So, what's the fifth way? And this one has everything to do with fats. And this is when I started understanding this, it blew me away, you guys, because I was like most of you probably thinking that fats were what was causing the cholesterol problem. This is why people are doing egg white sandwiches, why they're telling you have 4 eggs, but get rid of the yolks out of 3 of them. It's not the fat causing cholesterol problems or causing fat on your body, not that kind of fat. It's the sugar. And the sugar, what is happening is, remember that picture of the endothelium, right? On TikTok, YouTube, or on YouTube, Facebook, it's right there. All that damage in that endothelium, all those little gaps, all these little gaps in this endothelium, then what happens is this. And I learned something really interesting yesterday too that I did not know before. So we're going to share it out today. We have LDL and we have HDL. I've never really understood, outside of the density of the lipid, what the difference was really. Okay. I know that they say LDL is the bad kind and HDL is the good kind. So what I learned when listening to a doctor yesterday is this: the LDL actually is delivering nutrients to the blood. Okay. And then once the blood is done, the HDL is carrying the trash out. So LDL is bringing stuff in, HDL is carrying stuff out. One of the problems we've had is everybody's focused on lowering the HDL. But when you lower the HDL, or not the HDL, the LDL, what you're doing is you're starting to slow down nutrient delivery into the blood vessels. So this doctor was saying the problem is not lowering the LDL, the problem is raising the HDL. So I'll give you guys a calculation in a little bit that can help you understand where you're at on the scale. But now, with excess sugar inside the bloodstream, these little damages start to happen to that endothelium. All those little rips and tears are starting to happen inside the endothelium. Part of what the LDL does, besides delivering nutrients into the blood vessels, is that it's small and it's dense, low density lipoprotein. So one type, type A, is large and buoyant like a beach ball. And the other type, type B, is small and dense like a golf ball. So if you imagine those two things floating through your bloodstream, the beach ball is going to float around and just kind of bounce around until it finds a big spot to land, right? But it's not going to cause a lot of problems. It's going to kind of float through and carry these messages and this nutrients through the body. But the LDL, the type B LDL, will fall into those nooks and crannies in the blood vessels. Now, we want it to do that. In a normal, slightly damaged blood vessel, that LDL actually provides a plug, a block, a cementing agent to clear up, to close up that little gap. But when we have too much sugar tearing up, and one doctor explained it to me like sugar is like glass shards inside your bloodstream. So too much sugar inside your bloodstream can start to cause this damage and these tears inside the endothelium, partly because the endothelium is inflamed and starting to go through oxidative stress, and it's breaking down and it's having problems. Even though it's big and can't open, it has all these other problems going on inside the endothelium because of too much sugar. Now, the LDL normally blocks up those little holes, right? But some of these holes have gotten so big because we've had this sugar insulin problem for so long that the LDL doesn't any longer plug that hole. It kind of goes in through, lands up underneath that liner, and starts to build up. Now you have a buildup of LDL, and that's cholesterol buildup and plaques in your arteries because sugar was tearing up the endothelium, and the LDL-B is starting to land in there. But what makes it even worse is with insulin resistance, insulin is cueing your brain to tell your body to produce more LDL-B than it produces LDL-A. So now we're compounding the problem. We're making this even worse, where we're pushing more LDL into those blood vessels and building up that plaque. And was it the fat that caused that? No, it was the sugar. With this caveat, I want you guys to understand this. There is a difference in fats. Fats has been one of the things that's really been interesting for me. So our dietary fats are predominantly omega-6s or omega-3s, and we need a little bit of both. Typically, we should have about a 1-to-1 ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s in our diet. Unfortunately, most of us have a ratio of 20 omega-6 to 1 omega-3, and that's causing a problem of inflammation, even more of this inflammation, and increasing that increased inflammation is increasing insulin resistance, and so that circles back and creates more of this problem. Again, though, what you need to understand is that it started with excess sugar or uncontrolled sugar in your bloodstream. So 5 ways that insulin resistance is cueing your blood pressure to be higher than it needs to be. Now, I saw another diagram as I was looking through all of this, and they were talking about a timeline, how this could end up being atherosclerosis. And so they broke it down by decades. So in that first decade is when you're having like this higher blood pressure. And if you don't get it under control, then it's going to go into like the second decade where it starts to create even more of these tears and more of the buildup. And then by the third decade, that buildup is so bad that people are having heart problems. Why do I talk about this on an insulin resistance channel? So this is why. If we understand that insulin resistance is at the root of 95% of our hypertension or high blood pressure problems across the world, 95% of high blood pressure is caused by insulin resistance. That's not me saying it. There's studies out there. You can Google it. I believe that a lot of the studies are on the NIH's website. 95% of high blood pressure is caused by insulin resistance or metabolic disorder, which is all linked to insulin resistance. Then if we look at these numbers that over 80% of cardiovascular deaths are linked to long-term hypertension, and that the number one leading cause of, or one of the number one leading causes of naturally caused death is heart attacks, hypertension related heart disease. So if we start to backtrack out of that and say one of the leading killers is 80% linked to this hypertension, and the hypertension is 95% linked to insulin resistance, now we have a root issue that we can actually address and take care of. Does everybody understand and agree with that? Did all that make sense? Because that was a lot of information. What you really want to know is that insulin resistance, because some people think, oh yeah, so what? Who cares? It's insulin resistance. Maybe they get a little fat, maybe they get a little tired. It's not a big deal, right? It is a big deal. It could cost you your life because of your heart. Your kidneys could shut down. I had a guy who had stage 3 kidney disease, used the system. In 3 months, he was able to take himself off the list for preparatory surgeries to go in for dialysis. He's no longer needing dialysis, not even looking at it. His skin is clearer, his weight is down, his energy is better, his mental clarity is better. All of it because he got his insulin under control with this protocol. So I just said something that triggered me. How many of you guys understand and know from medical work that treating a type 2 diabetic requires some type of insulin because insulin's not doing its job? Does anybody know that? Good morning, Nelda. Does anybody know that giving a type 2 diabetic is what is the normal to help a type 2 diabetic out? Because if we're not producing enough insulin, let's give the body more insulin and then it will work, right? That's the train of thought. But what if we look at this other train of thought? What if we look at the fact that, hey, we're producing a lot of insulin? It's just that the body is shutting down to the cues of insulin because there's too much of it already in the system. So if we add more insulin to a type 2 diabetic, are we really helping them? Because we're giving them more of what made them sick in the first place. So let's shift gears for a second, because if you had an alcoholic in the family and they were trying to detox from alcohol and get their life back, would you walk in and plop down a six pack and say, hey, I know you're struggling. Drink this six pack. You're going to feel so much better. Would you do that to an alcoholic? Because that's in effect what they're doing to type 2 diabetics when they give them insulin. According to Dr. Bickman, giving type 2 diabetics insulin is making them fatter quicker, it's making them sicker quicker, and it's killing them quicker. So what we want to understand is I talk a lot about insulin, but is it really insulin that's the problem? We have too much insulin. It's causing all these problems. It's causing all this heart disease. It's causing all the stuff that I've talked about. But what causes the insulin to be so high? Why is our insulin out of control? What's going on with all of that that's making this insulin problem so prevalent today? Well, it has to do with our food. And I've said it multiple times already this morning, the way our body utilizes sugar has been changed because our food has been changed. So we have food that we don't crop rotate, we don't fertilize well. The nutrients in our raw organic produce is 40 to 75% less than it was 50 years ago. So now we're eating these healthy foods that we think are healthy. We're not getting the nutrition from them that we are supposed to be getting. That's number one problem. But in order to make these foods grow bigger, better, juicier, sweeter, more delectable, they had to strip something out to get those foods to grow when they genetically modified the food. And that one of those components is fiber. They've also stripped out some vitamins and minerals. They've stripped out some enzymes that we need to break down the food so that it can be utilized properly. So now we have a conundrum. we're eating food that we think is healthy. Our blood sugars are staying high. Irene, I hope you're still here. Our blood sugars are still high, and we don't understand why. But I'm eating healthy food. I'm eating from the organic aisle. I'm doing all of this stuff, and I'm like really limiting my bagged, boxed, barcoded foods, but I'm still getting sick. Well, we need to understand that the food that we're eating is so imperfect that it's causing us to be sick. Fiber, enzymes, nutrients, all stripped out of our food that allow our body to process that food and the energy from it efficiently. It's not happening. We're getting too much of the sugar to the bloodstream too quickly, but we're not getting enough absorption of nutrients. So now we have this increased energy load into the system, but we don't have all the other micronutrients that we need to support the system because it can't absorb in this environment, and we're getting sick. So what we need to understand is how to regulate the sugar in our system. And what we need to regulate the sugar, sorry, is not apple cider vinegar. Okay. It's fiber, it's enzymes. And so apple cider vinegar can provide some of that. I'm like, you want to, again, I'm going to say, you want to do an apple cider vinegar shot in the morning, do it. But that's not the thing that I've seen that's changed people's diabetes, their blood pressure, their kidney disease, their non-alcoholic fatty liver, all of that. What has worked is this thing of this protocol. So it's a tea that I have in the morning, which is in here right now. You can tell it's my tea because the lid is all green. Okay. So I have this tea in the morning. I'll have it again in the afternoon, and I'm going to explain why in a minute. And then the second piece of it is a fiber drink that I have before I eat that gives me 7 different types of soluble and insoluble fiber that help reduce how quickly that sugar goes into our bloodstream. It's like a prophylactic, if you will, for the sugar, saying, hey, yo, it's okay that you're here, but we're not going to give all of that sugar to the bloodstream at once. Oh, thank you, Capt Bad. If you have questions about it, let me know because we might either have to get on the phone and just have them switch your account, which is going to be the easiest thing, or you'll have to use a different email in order to do that. But either way, I'm more than happy to be there for you. Just let me know. You can use my link to text me as well. So you guys know that this whole protocol that I'm talking about is in the link in my profile. I will put it over here for you guys in YouTube land and Facebook land. Let me get that in there. But there's also my WhatsApp in there. So you can get a hold of me and ask me questions, decide if this is for you or not. I honestly believe that almost every person on the planet can use this system, needs the system. So that's a pretty easy answer for me. All right. So we've talked about that. We were talking about the sugar in our system, right? So this fiber, one of the things I really want to get into with the fiber this morning, or somewhat get into, is there have been so many studies that show that fiber can reduce a blood pressure or blood sugar spike by 10%. So we're talking about the things like the orange canister, the green canister, whatever. About 10% reduction of blood sugar spike is what they can afford. Recent studies done on this with a high glycemic breakfast of waffles, syrup, orange juice. This reduced a blood sugar spike by up to 43%. That's a huge difference between 10% and 43%, and managing your diabetes, your insulin resistance, your high blood pressure, all of that. So the system comes with one of these. So we're doing some intermittent fasting, a 16-hour fast period, an 8-hour eating window. I help coach you through all of that. But during the eating window, the meal with the most carbohydrates is where people take this. Now, at 60 years old and having done so much damage to my body, I still do 2 to 3 of these a day. I still do this one before I eat every time I eat. So it's giving me that blood sugar spike reduction, up to 43% reduction. That translates into a much lower insulin load in your body, and that's what we're looking for. Okay. But the tea, Why did we go, and some of you know, some of you don't, we went from 2 fiber a day and 1 tea a day to 2 tea and 1 fiber. Because the company's continually looking at science and how we can do all of this natural stuff to help your insulin resistance or your metabolism. Our company is solely focused on metabolism. This tea has antioxidants, anti-inflammatories, anti-cancer properties. It has every single vitamin and mineral that we need to sustain life contained in the tea. It's highly concentrated, 375 times more potent than a standard bagged yerba mate tea. And what it's doing is a couple of things. It's helping you be more sensitive to insulin. It's helping you get that sugar into your cells. It's helping you with glucagon like peptide production in your own system, increasing the production of GLP-1 by 70% in your own system. So that's way higher than those drugs can elicit natural production of GLP-1. That GLP-1 is helping manage your blood sugar levels, but it's also helping you manage your hunger. So it works on a dual pathway. One in the gut causes a little bit of distension in the gut. Now your gut says, ooh, there's distension. I must have energy. I must be full. In the brain, it's shutting down the hunger areas while allowing the brain to have energy to function. So when we have brain fog, depression, and fatigue, one of the reasons we have a high amount of hunger is our brain is calling for energy. And so we're wanting to eat to get energy to this brain that is struggling, but in a body that's overridden with insulin resistance because of too much sugar, we're not getting energy to the brain, even when we're eating more of those Snickers bars, Reese's bars, potato chips, muffins, whatever. That energy still isn't getting to the brain. So you're continuing to eat, which is putting on more fat and causing more problems, but it's not getting energy to the brain. The tea helps energy get to the brain in a way that you will be shocked by the first time you try it. I had a woman who said, Misha, I can't fast. I'm such a food addict. There's no way I can fast for 16 hours. You're crazy if you think I'm going to do that. Day one, she texted me and said, what is this? It's 1 p.m. and I'm not even hungry. I have never been able to skip my morning meal, much less go till noon or 1 o'clock without being hungry, without wanting to snack, without any of that. What is this? And this tea is what gave her that satiety that allowed her to easily breeze through the fasting period that allows us to start becoming more insulin sensitive. Now it looks like there's a whole bunch of questions here, so let's get to those. If I can. If I missed a question or a comment, please just restate it, and I'm more than happy to answer whatever I can. Okay. So that's all the system is doing, you guys, is it's just putting back what we need in order for our bodies to function properly. I have listened to so many doctors around metabolism and nutrition and learning what they're talking about. And one of the overarching, most repeated things that I hear is that our food is foreign to our body in the way that we're getting it today. So we start with bag box barcoded foods. Let's get rid of those as much as possible. Start leaning into more whole foods, eat at home more. But then understanding that even when we do that, our foods have been genetically modified so much that I've had pescatarians and vegans who try to do all of their food as clean as possible, who were still suffering and found benefits by adding back in the nutrients that have been stripped out of even our organic foods. That's what this does. Energy, satiety, blood sugar regulation, lipid regulation. It's reversed my diabetes, my hypertension, and so many other things. So that's all it is, you guys. It's $5 a day. Do it for 90 days. There's a 90-day money-back guarantee. So if you try it, in those 90 days, you're going to be paying the same price that I pay, and you will never pay more than I pay. You will get to ask me questions and whatever as you go along the road to like help you out. I can take a look at your diet and see if there's any recommendations I can make. But you're going to get a quality guarantee. That means this has been tested at 3 points during the processing and manufacturing to make sure that you're getting exactly what we say you're getting. The good stuff that the Cleveland Clinic and the University of Sydney have all, and many others have all done testing and work with us on this product. So you get all of that, and you get the 90-day money back guarantee when you use my link. If you go to Amazon, eBay, Walmart, you're not getting any of that. So, and you're paying way more than you're supposed to. You're paying about $100 more. I haven't seen anybody who's paid less than $100 extra for their product when they go on Amazon, eBay, Walmart. You're going to get it in 3 to 10 days from the company directly. Most people, it's 3 to 5 days. And that's it. And then you start your journey. You get text and communication from me, and we work on getting you healthy with whatever it was that you were struggling with so that you can have a more productive life that just isn't full of pain and suffering anymore. So, and most of us have some type of issue that we're struggling with that just makes it more difficult for us to make it through today's world. So, use the link. I'll be back tomorrow. Not sure, is there something on this list above? You guys, I don't have the list up over here. Let me put it up on this other side. On the list, is there anything that is bothering you guys, that you're struggling with, that you don't understand, that you want me to talk about? Let me know, because I'm more than happy to come in and explain what's happening with that and why addressing insulin resistance can help you with that. So check the list. If you want to, just message me privately if you don't want to put it in here, and we'll come back tomorrow and we'll talk about it. Otherwise, I'll find something to talk about: fiber, fats, chlorogenic acids, all the crazy stuff I love to talk about. All right. Hey, Jenny, it's good to see you. Okay, we will see you guys tomorrow. And I do have a Facebook group I hadn't been active in lately, but it's on Facebook, called Beating Insulin Resistance. Um, Go there and join that group if you just want all of the information in a less chaotic place where it's just people who are dealing with insulin resistance. Love to have you in there, and we're going to start putting some good value in there for insulin, maybe some recipes and whatnot too. But all right, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a blessed day, everybody. And thanks for joining me this morning. We'll talk to you tomorrow.